Hey folks, Jeff from Corrugated Cavalier here. I'm coming to you with a slightly different video today on a topic that I hold somewhat dear in HEMA, and that is grappling in HEMA. I don't really want this to be any drama or anything like that, though. I prefer to bring people together, and I think that we can all do that if we take a step back and wonder why we think about certain things the way that we do, and take a look from another perspective as well. Um, so, first and foremost, I know that this can be a kind of contentious topic, so I want to dispel a couple of things right away, and that is, don't be a keyboard warrior, saying like, oh, that would never work into streets or something like that, or, into streets, if they would have gotten into a grapple, you would have been done. Like, nobody's getting into sword fights in the streets. If you want to talk about, replicating that as close as we can, that's another conversation. But you still have to be kind of careful about how you do that. But I think like that's valid in my opinion. But yeah, you have to be pretty careful about how you do that as well. And also, while I am pro grappling, and I will come right out and say that, like you still have to play by whatever rules are agreed upon when you're fighting somebody. So if you're in a tournament that doesn't allow takedowns, you just can't do it. That's violating the agreement that you have with the other competitors, the judges, and the tournament organizers. And similarly, if in your club you don't, then you can't do it. Or if your partner is just not feeling it that day, they say, "Hey, I don't really want to grapple today," or for whatever reason, then you just don't do it. Don't be an asshole. That's kind of rule number one of grappling in this stuff, in my opinion. With that said, all this is just my opinion. I am pretty new to HEMA. Don't even quite have 2 years in yet, but I have been in other martial arts pretty much all my life, doing various intensity levels of sparring with various amounts of gear and stuff like that. Not to say that my opinion matters more than anybody else's or anything like that. It's just that my experience is more than the little bit that I've been doing HEMA. Okay, get out my sweet Vadi notebook here, and I wanted to use notes to keep this from being rambly and keep myself on topic. So, like I said, I am pro grappling. But I also, at the same time, understand that there are people who may have good reasons to not be. Maybe they're just not familiar with it. Maybe HEMA is the first like actual athletic endeavor that they've really done in their lives, and that's fine. I understand that grappling. At least I feel takes a little bit more physicality. A sword is, after all, a labor-saving device, really, and I can kind of understand that. So I don't really, want to shame people who don't want to do the grappling, but I think that we can come to a couple of understandings about that that I'll get into later. Some people just want to do swords, and that's also fine. I do think that for anybody who just wants to do swords or doesn't want to do grappling at all, I think you do personally have to admit that, or I personally think that you have to admit that you are neglecting a pretty big side and aspect of the historical martial arts, because it is in the sources and it's got to be there for a reason, and I'm going to get into that in a little bit. But basically, whether you are for it or against it, swords, I do believe that swords are for everybody, and I really don't, I'm not trying to exclude anybody or anything like that who doesn't want to do grappling. We're all here to have fun. It's a hobby at the end of the day. Nobody's, getting into real sword fights, as I said before. That said, I'm going to go into my reasons that I do like it. So one of the main reasons that I like grappling in HEMA is because, for me, one of the most fun parts about it is recreating a style of fighting that used to exist, and also the context in which we were fighting. And it's in the sources. It's in all of the Longsword sources that I know of, at least. I don't really know Meyer, but I mean, it's in Fiore. I'll put up some images. Of course it's in Fiore. Everybody knows that. But it's also in Lichtenauer. There's a fair amount of grappling in Lichtenauer as well. I'm not an expert on that by any means, but my club does German Longsword in that tradition. It's in Vadi, and he's getting longer swords, so even that increased range, there's still a fair amount of grappling actions in Vadi, and there are also presa in Bolognese tradition where they have quite long longswords. So it's in all the sources, and it's got to be there for a reason. I think if I think it's naive to say that it wasn't happening, and we of course we can never tell for sure. But I mean, if it's in that many sources, like it must have been happening for one reason or another, right? That's just my opinion. My second reason for liking grappling and HEMA is because I think, to me, it makes the martial art more well-rounded. I did a lot of empty-hand martial arts and a couple of different weapons when I was growing up, and having that close fighting once you get inside range makes the art a lot more well-rounded and interesting to me. So yeah, for me, it just makes it more fun. So to me, that's a pretty good reason. The third reason that I like grappling and HEMA is because it's a valid strategy. Some people like to sit at the edge of measure and probe and play and stuff like that. I might do that and then decide that moving into grappling range is my best bet. It's a valid strategy, and it also just happens when measure breaks down. And no matter how much people want to say, like, oh, okay, well, then you just weren't using your measure correctly and stuff like that. Sure, but are we all really perfect fencers? Like, that we didn't get into a range that we didn't desire at some point? It does happen, and that's what grappling is there for, in part. So let's get into a couple of arguments against grappling. First, I want to kind of do away with one that this one does make me a little bit upset, and I'll try not to get too dramatic about it or go on too much of a rant, but I sometimes see this argument that the grappling is not as technical or artful. That one does bother me. Grappling is technical. It's just as technical as swordplay. Some people might argue more. I'm not going to get into that, but it is just as technical as swordplay. And if you think it's not, then that gets into my next point. That attitude that the grappling is not as artful or technical is elitism. I don't think you can look at it any other way. You're saying that form is not meeting your standards of what the art should be. And to me, that's elitism. I guess somebody could argue otherwise, but I don't really see much of a way around that personally. Also, whether it's artful or technical doesn't even really matter, and this goes for whether you are more interested as a competitive fighter or more interested in resurrecting the historical style. On the competitive side, if it's allowed to get a point via grappling, then it doesn't matter how you got the point. If you're looking at the historical side, then it doesn't matter how you defeated your opponent as long as you did so. So it doesn't really matter. It doesn't even matter if it's as artful or technical. But it is. So this is the second main thing that I want to address with grappling and HEMA, and that is the safety argument. And I think that there is at least a discussion to be had around this, but I really don't believe that it is any less safe than the swordplay. And my personal philosophy is that safety is primarily in the practitioner. All the HEMA gear is great. I love it. It allows us to train a little bit more intensely than, if we were like low gear and using wooden swords or something, then you wouldn't be able to train as intensely. So HEMA gear is great, but you can still hurt somebody in HEMA gear if you don't have good control. Most fencing masks don't have great side of the head protection, and if you bash somebody in the side of the head with a 3-foot-long steel bar, it's not going to be great. So I believe that safety is in the practitioner first. That said, everybody should know how to fall, in my opinion. That's kind of my one sticking point on this video. If I can convince people of one thing, everybody needs to know how to fall if they are going to spar at all. With boffers, whatever, it doesn't matter. That's my opinion. People can feel free to disagree, but you need to know how to fall. And if you have a club and you're sparring and nobody knows how to fall, I would really highly recommend seeking out somebody who does know that to teach you. And falling is also not something that you have a falling day, a falling training, everybody does it once and then you don't do it again. I really highly recommend that you do it at least a little bit every class as part of your warm-ups or something like that. Getting your body used to that is a way to be really, really familiar with it, and then it becomes an automatic response when something does happen. If you are going to throw, So the falling part is, even if you're not going to throw, I think you should know how to fall just in case accidents happen. If you are going to throw and do joint locks and stuff like that, you need to be doing them relatively frequently or regularly in class, because this gives you an idea of if something is going wrong. You can feel that something is going wrong, and you can hit an abort button, which I'll talk about in a second as well. And as far as taking joint locks goes, there are ways to mitigate pressure on your joints. The way that I was taught and I really like is just keeping your back straight and bending your legs. You can hinge at the hips, but still keep your back straight and bend your legs, and you can mitigate a lot of the pressure on your joints. There are other ways too. Make sure everybody knows how to tap as well. So my last thing here is you need an abort button. And this goes for strikes as well, in my opinion. Like if you're about to hit somebody, especially in the head, and you feel like it's a little too hard, I don't think you should follow through with that strike. It's not worth the point. I know that we have the gear to be able to train more intensely, but if you think that you're going to rock somebody, you should pull that blow. That's just my opinion. But for throws, this goes as well. And I'm going to put up a couple of clips here. The first one, it's a little harder to see, but I was in a tournament that didn't allow throws. I was moving in on this fencer, and I was attempting a Fiore disarm. However, he had a death grip on his sword. He really didn't want me to disarm him for obvious reasons. That's a lot of points in a tournament. But I felt his foot coming off the ground, and I knew if I kept turning, then I would put him on the ground. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, hop! So I stopped the throw. Judges were supposedly supposed to give points if it looked like it would have been a throw. I didn't get any points for it, but that's not the most important thing here. I don't know if that person that I was fencing knows how to fall or not, and it was against the rules of a tournament, so I just had to hit the abort button. It happens. You just have to. And I'll put up another one here, even though it's not a grapple. It's the same idea. I am attempting a pommel strike on Joey and Grau after I attempted a punta falsa from Fiore, and I missed the thrust. And because he's a little shorter and he was really in on my measure, I thought that I was going to hit him with the cross, which would be very bad. So I just turned the flat of my blade against him and didn't complete the strike or anything like that. We broke it off. I didn't get any points, of course, once again. But having that abort button when something is going wrong is important. Similarly here, I was fighting Luke Mara. And you can see where I break his wooden sword as well. But on this one where I'm coming across with my left hand and putting my sword across his chest, I knew that I could take him down in that moment. He did kind of do a good foot evade. That was my main attempt, but I knew if I just kept pressing and kind of used my body weight, I could have taken him to the floor. However, I also know in harness fighting that landing on top of somebody is one of the surest ways to injure them. So, once again, there was just something in my brain right away. It's like, this doesn't feel right. I don't want to land on top of Luke with my sword across his chest or even his throat as we go to the ground. So, once again, abort button. I didn't get the point. That's okay. I felt like I sort of won that point anyways, even though I got called to a stop. That's fine. We were having fun. I don't want to hurt anybody, and that's what it's all about. So this can also be summed up in, especially with grappling, I think, keeping a playful atmosphere. I have some other ideas on how to make grappling safe in HEMA that are kind of experimental that I want to try out. If you guys would like to hear them, let me know. So once again, I really don't want this to be divisive or bring up drama. If you're on one side or the other, and like really strongly, and you don't think one side is a valid way of practicing, I think you should kind of reflect in on yourself and think, why do you think that it's not a valid way of practicing? I think both are totally valid. I like to put it in for the reasons that I stated above. But yeah, let's not be jerks to each other and let people enjoy stuff. And if you take away anything from this video, please, if you are sparring, once again, regardless of what you're sparring with and other equipment, please learn how to fall. That's really one of my main things. It's also one of the most practical things you'll probably ever learn in your martial arts career. Okay, this ended up being a little bit longer than intended, but I hope that it was kind of thought-provoking for some people. And if you disagree, that's fine. You can put it in the comments. Let's just, keep it respectful, and having a conversation about it is totally fine. Thank you all for coming by the channel once again. I appreciate all of you following me. We're getting close to 250, so let's keep it up, keep the conversation going, and thanks once again for coming by the channel. Please click like, subscribe if you haven't, share this around if you think somebody else might find it interesting, or if you want to say, hey, look at this idiot and his opinions, and have people come flame me, well, please don't do that. But hey, it'll get me views, right? Anyways, be good to each other, and ciao.